has done that. Sylvia? Sylvia, will you share the question or Adrian? Okay, fine. So the first question that we want a reaction from each of the panelists, and please take 2 minutes at most, each of you, maybe even less than 2 minutes if possible, is what opportunities or challenges can be drawn from the presentations and experiences for growth and development of extension and youth participation in extension and advisory services in the East African region. So we could start with Penina, the same order we started. What opportunities do you see? You've given us your experience of DigiCow. What opportunities do you see of further youth engagement, further utilization of extension, and how do you see us transforming extension advisory services in Kenya specifically, and maybe in the East African region, and even in the African region as a whole? Penina, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Okay, I see a lot of opportunities for the youth when it comes to e-extension. As I had mentioned, that the youth are very connected, they are very vibrant, they are able to, they have actually interacted with the farming communities, they understand where the challenges are, and there's a lot of opportunities for them. The biggest challenge I see is for the youth to be able to pick up, they'll need to be supported very much in terms of how do you grow your business, in terms of how the financing, those kind of things. But I see a lot of opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other additions?
Okay. In relation to Kenya, because this is where I've worked very much, I've seen that the extension services, there's a big opportunity for extension services and advisory services in Kenya, and I believe even in East Africa. When we started as Digital, we had a lot of demand from countries outside Kenya, and we had actually to lock the services within the country. So this shows that there is a huge opportunity for extension and advisory services. And this also indicated that how much farmers and those practicing farming are actually going to other platforms to seek for information and to seek for services. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, key comments also on the same question from Justin. Justin, are you still with us?
So I think basically the opportunities are similar, because I think for the case of South Sudan, I see an opportunity where digital extension can be upscaled at a national level, where government can even take interest in and then digitize some of its extension messages. So this provides an opportunity for private sector, especially the youth, to now innovate or even adopt some of the technologies that are already being used in other countries to bring them home in South Sudan. Because this is new, and it is something that I have seen being taken with a lot of excitement, even at public institutions. Now, in terms of in East Africa, of course, like I've already mentioned, these technologies are already being developed. So I think what happens is this provides a market opportunity for East African tech companies to explore opportunities in South Sudan and then see how this can be developed. In fact, I have already learned a lot from the previous presentations in relation to dairy and cows, I think, which is an information that can also be translated into crop production and so on. So I see a lot of opportunities in the creating opportunities for South Sudan from the experiences in the region. And because youth are very excited, I think that and our population is of course over 70% youth. So we see a big opportunity in that regard. The other thing that I see as a challenge in our country is the access to infrastructure, which is the internet infrastructure. So we still have a limited internet coverage, which is not covering all the rural areas. We also have limited telephone coverage, not covering all the areas. So perhaps it also gives us an opportunity to link with the the telephone companies or the internet companies to see how they can innovate access to internet in the country. I think that's what I can say for that.
Thank you very much. Then we can go to the researcher, Spillman. Your views and comments on that question?
Sure, it's a great question. I think that e-extension in general is an incredible opportunity for the youth, because their education, their training, their career paths have in the last decade or so really been shaped by the digital economy. I mean, there's so much growth in this industry, in this space of whether it's app development or back-end analytics or data science or product and service development in the digital space, that it's almost natural for the youth to enter into these opportunities. I think from a policy perspective, what's really important is for government and for companies themselves, especially larger companies, to recognize the power that youth, that say the millennial generation, as we call them in my country, bring to the table, and really to give them the space to innovate, because the products and services that they can potentially develop for agriculture and the rural sector are powerful. But if our organizational cultures and behaviors and structures prevent them from coming up, prevent them from accessing the resources they need to develop these types of products, like DigiCow, for instance, or Hello Tractor or whatnot, if we put barriers in front of the youth because of our institutional intransigence, then I think we're really missing some massive opportunities. I mean, look, in my country, here in the United States, people love new technology, but they also love to hate the people who get rich from new technology, and maybe that's okay. I have no problems with it. But what would we do without Microsoft and Amazon and all these great companies when they started originally, in their roots as youthful startups? I mean, if we didn't have lending programs and venture capital and all sorts of other institutional systems to support them, where would we be, right? So I think for the youth, both in the private sector and especially in government, we have to think about stepping out of the way and letting developers really get into this field. And encourage them along the way. And then, from my research perspective, simply to say that, look, some are going to work, some aren't, and we need, especially when public funds are involved, we need to be very serious about evaluating their strengths and weaknesses, so that we make good investments with high returns. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, David. Finally, to David Miner, what are your views on that question?
Okay. First,
very briefly,
in Kenya we have about 4 million or so people who have a cow or two, and about 25% of those would show entrepreneurial orientation in their practice. They are not just there to keep a cow for their own milk; they also want to sell and make an income. So the government has been trying to look at, with a dwindling extension support from the government, is it possible to bring it back by creating these opportunities for the youth who can be trained and support farmers through extension. So this program means that you cluster about 50 farms, smallholders, and have one trained youth supporting all these 50 farms with extension. Then at the cooperative, they are probably paying about 20 cents or 50 cents, whatever is enough to be able to pay that youth who is supporting them. So that is not going to be possible without a way of monitoring from a screen how all these farms are doing and supporting those farms to do the basic recording that can enable that youth who is supporting as an extensionist, seeing from where they sit, how each farm is performing, what kind of support the farm needs, and just going out to the right farm where the support is required. So that method will make it possible. It will not be possible without using some ICT methods. And that's one of the applications that CAPRO is looking at as the government rolls out this. The second one is the issue of agency. Again, you've had recently the minister talking about government releasing about 100,000 acres into production of fodder, where private sector produces fodder on government land through leasing. Some of it is irrigated, the other is rain-fed. But for us to be able to have, for the farmers to have access to good quality fodder, there has to be all this production. But then there's a lot of supply chain stages between where the fodder is produced and where the fodder is consumed. There are a lot of linkage opportunities for youth who are involved in supplying fodder to the smallholders or to the cooperatives. So again, listing them as agents in the fodder trade through the marketplace is very important. And so far we have registered about 21 agencies who are already doing this, but we think that with the government step of allowing, releasing more land, this is going to become more scaled and we can have a lot more youth involved in this process. And finally, we have the job linkages. And I think all these things I'm talking about, they are things that we have done, but in a much smaller scale and which are now ripe for upscaling. This is where people have come from school, they have done a relevant degree, but then they cannot know where else are they going to get to. So the issue of attachment, or what we say, training on the job, and then finally getting to know where to work, putting them on the list as people who are trained and having them connected to the places of training, that again is going to be possible through the marketplaces, as long as we have a good training program, so that any youth recommended for this work are able to do it. And then also the videos, instead of having somebody coming from school and having to struggle to tell the messages to the farmers, sometimes having the risk of telling the wrong messages or half-truths, then they can be able to use the videos that have already been released by people who are more experienced. Then they show the video and then they're able to explain according to the video without the pressure to having to know so much, and they are just from school. So I think those are the three areas I would say, Henry, about how relevant this is going to be for the youth, especially more for the East African areas where youth unemployment is a huge crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a second question, which is very, very brief. David Spelberg has alluded to policy gaps. So we are again inviting the panel to respond now in less than half a minute, if possible, on what are the policy gaps that that need to be addressed for us to get where we want to be with digital and youth and e-extension. Again, we'll start with Penina. Sylvia, please roll the slide. Let's go to the next question. Yes. So the policy gaps, quickly on what you think needs to be addressed for us to really get e-extension where it should be and youth participation where it should be. Penina, from your experience, what are the gaps? What do you think are the legal frameworks that need to be in place for you to be able to optimize digital?
Mm-hmm. Okay. What I see as the policy gaps that hinder upscaling of digital technology is there are so many gaps that are there. One is even around taxation. Seems it's not very clear. Secondly, we have policy gaps around how do you control people who are providing extension services. The other policy gap that I have experienced is where the government has not put into place a system where it's able to actually pick a startup and have like policies that are geared towards the startups. So you'll find some policies are way above the startup, and for you to actually be able to align your services with what the government requires you to be doing, you'll find that the gap is too much, you are not able to actually even meet some of the standards that they are placing for you. So I feel like the government also needs to have another level of policy that actually caters for startups, and startups that are actually being innovated by youths who are yet to get the financial muscle or the skills that are needed to actually drive their companies. Yeah. Yeah, those are the gaps that I feel whenever I'm working in digital. Those are the things that I feel that can actually be addressed better by the policies, and so many other things. Like when we talk about regulations, we are highly controlled by some regulation, just like what my colleague in Performata said. What we are offering, like the vet services, are highly regulated, but you see, we are still a startup. And the kind of standards that have been placed by the government, they are also very high. They are actually meant for companies that have been in operation for some time. So those are the policy gaps that I feel can hinder a startup when it's trying to upscale its technologies. Remember, the digital technologies are actually based on some things that are happening on the ground. Yeah, when we talk about a digital technology, like maybe providing information, there's the digital platform, but there's also the information that is also actually regulated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Justin?
Yes, I think that is already very elaborate, but I just want to add that as we all agree that the government, that these solutions, these IT solutions or digital solutions for extension are useful, it is important for us to start thinking of how this can link to government structures or government strategies and frameworks. Because as we all agree that this is a new innovation, especially East Africa, or particularly in my own country, this is a new approach that has not been captured in the government's frameworks, and therefore it is important that this is done so. Since we all agree it is important, and what I've seen is that most of the government frameworks are stuck in the traditional approach. And therefore, there is a need for policy dialogue in order to ensure that this is introduced. The other challenge is funding, and I think this has been very clearly articulated by the previous speaker, that the government, there is no support for these innovations that are youth-led. So youth are usually just allowed to do their things, and then they end up in just a prototype, and they don't go up into full scale. So governments need to be sensitized to or put policies in place to support these kind of innovations that are coming up by youth. I think that's what I can add.
Thank you. And then we can go to David Spellman. Do you have any other addition? You had alluded to policy gaps as conclude your remarks in your presentation. Any additions?
Yeah, Henry. Let me highlight. Just a few. First of all, is the issue of internet and ICT in general. We don't have. I think right now the private sector is moving much faster than government. It could be expected for a country like ours, and I'm referring to Kenya. But at the same time, we need to see government putting a structure on this, and perhaps even putting requirements for the administrative units, the counties, to have ICT centers where a lot of these innovations can be incubated, so that the people who are coming from agriculture colleges do not walk in hoping to get employed like the way their parents were employed into extension, but they can be taught new methods, and the county can be able to reach higher volumes in terms of outreach. But right now, what's happening is that the government is still working very hard to ensure that they have more and more extension people. And I don't think it's going to work, because we have more farmers who are asking for more information every day, and the numbers are still very low. So the issue of internet, how do we ensure that every farmer who has a smartphone will not have to pay so much to access information? They could pay for the information, but they don't have to pay so much for the internet. So I think there's a difference between the two. Then two, the issue of industrial production of fodder, I had mentioned that. The government now are releasing this kind of information. We did a cabinet memo through the Kenya Dairy Board, and I think that is what they're now beginning to respond to. But the same memo was also talking about can the government also put aside 2 billion shillings to be able to provide for the first purchase of bulk fodder from the sourcing areas to the cooperatives. Now, unless we have that, again, we see that the takeoff is a bit slow. So in as much as we want to create this as a serious chapter in the dairy transformation, it doesn't move very fast unless there's a policy on how much investment will be supported from the government. There has to be a funding from the treasury, going through the banks or going through the certain selected funding schemes. But right now, there is no policy like that. 3 is the issue of private extension. I think people who talked from here in this presentation are people who are practicing extension in different ways, but they are not in public, they're not attached to public service. As it is now, there's no way to certify or to say that Performata qualifies to serve farmers because they are this or that, or they have achieved this kind of requirements. So there should be a way of government endorsing private sector provided services, and also individuals who are leaving school and want to also play a role in extension without having to be employed by the state, by the central government or the county government. There's a huge gap there on private extension services. And finally, the issue of financing. And I don't mean financing for fodder alone, but I mean for the sector, dairy, and also the wider agriculture. As it is now, and I had a meeting with the bank yesterday, they're only giving about 5% of their total portfolio into agriculture. The rest of it is going elsewhere. So how do we invigorate agriculture and ensure that it becomes a huge employer of the youth who are now waiting for jobs, unless we also increase financing? Without a bank, I don't think that is going to work. So I think there needs to be policies on how do we ensure that we have more funding availed for dairy, availed for horticulture, floriculture, and the others, so that we can be able to move this sector to another level. So I think there are more policies. I could say seed, I could say cement. I think, Henry, you're aware we have much more issues at the policy level. But I think for this presentation, I would stop with the 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, Spellman. Sorry for the mix-up, both of you are David.
No problem at all. No problem at all. I talked about policy in my earlier remarks. I think let me just leave you with one thought. A lot of innovation in agricultural extension doesn't happen at the federal or central level, right? A lot of what we want to see happen occurs at the ground level, at the farm level, at the local administrative level. And time and again in different countries, ranging from China to India, now to Kenya and Ethiopia, we find that decentralized and devolved government allows for more innovation, right? Policy innovation, implementation and design, and implementation in programs like digital extension. So if I were sitting in the East Africa region, I think one of the things I'd be thinking about is how to take digital extension ideas and apps to county governments or to district governments or regional governments or provincial governments, because that's where the action is. And that's where you can get the best evidence of things that may be working or may be scalable or may simply work really well. As a point of history, if you go back and look at China's massive land reform process, right, where they took land out of sort of collective farming into household farming and reversing the Communist Party's long-term policy on collective action. It actually occurred at a very local level at first. It was an experimentation by party members. And then it spread to the whole country and to the center into policy. So with digital extension, I think it's the same thing. Drive down locally, develop the evidence base, and use that to influence policy at higher levels. And of course, you need an enabling national or central policy environment, but ultimately the innovation and the change is going to, I think, be driven through decentralized and devolved systems. And we're at a good point in history in countries like Kenya and Ethiopia, Uganda and Rwanda, where localized innovation can happen and can be used to influence policy upwards. So that's just one dimension of the problem. It's not all dimensions of the problem, but it is one way to address this question of policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enough for the panels. Now we shall open up for the participants to ask questions, and I'll ask Sylvia to facilitate that particular session, pick out and flag out the questions and refer them to a specific panelist or to the panel in general. Sylvia.
We have one question from David Onyango. He's saying very insightful. How do we best link our young acting digital founders to start up generator initiatives to help them scale up or out these digital innovations?
Okay, who wants to go with that? Anybody from the panel can offer to respond to that, not just the presenters, anybody else? Kindly repeat the question again, Sylvia.
Okay, David Onyango David Onyango is asking, how do we best link our young acting digital founders to start up generator initiatives to help them scale up or out these digital innovations?
Anybody willing to respond to that?
Yeah, maybe if I try to give a bit of an insight to that. Yeah, maybe you can look at it in two ways. One is that you've got to be known, not to be seen, to be known exactly. So I think this kind of opportunities are able to expose the innovators in what is available, and that is where a bit of a linkage can come in. And I think also as our presenters, our panelists ably discussed, also is looking at the issue of from a policy space, whereby now, and I think I've seen that where some of the countries able to look at it as a challenge. We had and like even I think last year in Kenya we had this challenge by the World Bank on what they call the disruptive agricultural technology. So ideally, I think what you say is, and that's why we say like in a project like this, for us, the way we are is that when we have some of these innovations exposed to, we're able to get a bit of linkage. But I think what I can say is that I think this kind of webinar is in linkages and also partnerships. I think it'd be important to also look at partnerships in the area that the innovator or the business is interested in. So in terms of if somebody is in agriculture advisory services, as somebody like David or Penina, who is already in that space, becomes a very good person to just link up with and get to learn. And then from there now, get in the whole ecosystem of who exactly is playing about that. So thank you.
Okay, I can also give a take on it. What we can be able to do is support the young startups with skills needed to bring out whatever they are doing, because you will find someone is actually doing something very great, but putting it outside there becomes a challenge. So if we can have an organization or someone coming in to fill in that gap, that can really help. Secondly, forums like this, where we are able to expose whatever the youth are doing to the wider community, who can actually pick up whatever they are doing and they can get the support. Thirdly, private-public partnerships. If I speak from my own experience, I come from Kiambu County in Kenya, and what the agribusiness county officer did is to actually be inviting DigiCow to forums where we will be able to meet investors, we'll be able to meet stakeholders, and giving us a free platform so that we can actually sell out whatever we are doing. And this actually gives a lot of exposure. So I would highly recommend those kind of partnerships. So the three things I've said is supporting the youth, gain the skills so that they can be able to communicate whatever they are doing to the wider community, where we have investors and we have other people who can support them. Secondly, forums that can expose these young people who are trying to bring up businesses, and that private-public partnership, of which DigiCow has really benefited.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Sylvia? I can see Edward Ogo has his hands up. Is Edward still with us? Edward? Or Kibet Chirchir? Or Noah Lusaka? Anybody who has a hands up, please, let's get your contribution.
Edward is here.
Oh, Edward, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting us. It has really been a wonderful presentation and discussion. I have particularly also learned so much about this. First of all, I come from an organization called South Sudan Agricultural Producers Union. We are also involved in South Sudan in a number of extension services across the country. But my question is to learn something from the presentation of Justin. Because at the moment we are also working on developing extension strategy at the moment. And 2 weeks ago, I also came from the field. I also noticed how overwhelmed our extensionists are when they're trying to deliver services. Because when you look at the ratio of the farmers to the extension workers, it's indeed quite overwhelming. But this e-extension is a wonderful opportunity that we can tap into. And then, leapfrogging the extension services. But my question is regarding the dissemination and then even collecting the feedback from the farmers, because the way I look at these farmers, when I was there, I couldn't see any farmer with even a smartphone. Like, how do you disseminate these videos to them, and then how are you able to generate feedback from them? Because this could be a very, very important opportunity for us to really make sure that extension reach farmers, and then in a wider way, and then relieve our extensionists from the biggest burden of reaching farmers in a more traditional way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward. Justin? Justin?
Yeah, thank you, Edward, for that insightful discussion about, and if actually a question about extension in South Sudan. So I do understand where you're coming from, because that's the space where we are in. In terms of dissemination, we know that not all farmers can have access to mobile phones even, leave alone the smartphone. But what we do is to solve that puzzle, we provide some basic equipment. We use basic equipment, one of which is Pico projector. These are just simple projectors you can put in your pocket, and you can go with it to the communities, use community video halls, if you get what I mean. For those of you who are in Africa, I think you know it's everywhere there. And then you project information that you already have in your flash disk to these communities, and they can watch it together as a group. So that's one method that we can use for the case of South Sudan, and we have actually used it for the seed companies extension system. So what we're going to do is, I think I will take your contact. We'll link up with Yuba and definitely discuss methodologies on how to link up on that. So the technology is basic. We can give you access to some of the equipment that we have.
Thank you, Justin. We are really running out of time, but we still have a few questions. Do we have Noah Lusaka? Noah? If Noah is not with us, Jojo Kundi? Jojo Kundi?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm following the proceedings from Arusha at the ESE, but from GIZ project, which has very relevant components being implemented in relation to what is being discussed. I had two questions, maybe one on the private sector seed extension system. I've posted it, but I've not seen any response to it. I wanted to just come about to ask how, in that system, the quality assurance system was or is being assured, knowing that seed production as such is a very sensitive component of agricultural production. In relation to that, based on what I know about South Sudan, also how successful was it to scale up, knowing that the digital or telephony internet penetration is so limited? And as a lesson for other countries who I think have taken it up, well, like Kenya, what is the comparison? The second question is related to, I think it goes to Spellman. It's very interesting, your presentation you've given to us. I wanted to just pick out your thinking on the existence of so many agricultural applications in the digital space. Some, it's like a competition arena. You can have, for example, in this section or a section of the value chain, for example, inputs, you can have you can actually have so many apps which are digital and are meant to be used by the actors in that section of the value chain, all the way to consumption, for example, all the way to processing or being ready for market. I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion if governments can have a system to aggregate these digital apps after some evaluation, so that it can be availed for access to actors in the value chain at a much lower cost, especially for countries that have very good digital penetration on the ground. Thank you, George.
Thank you, my namesake, Okundi. I'll ask the respondents to be very, very, very brief. We are really running out of time. So Justine, please, a minute and under, and the same for Spellman. Just put the key points, and we can give a more comprehensive answer, maybe on the chat box or in a follow-up email. Thank you, Justine. Justin?
I think I was using headphones, but let me respond directly to the computer. Yes, so I was saying, in regards to quality assurance, we work with the government, especially the Department of Research, and it would have been the best to work with private research institutions, like the case in Uganda and Kenya or somewhere else. But in South Sudan, we don't have that. So we work with the government to assure quality. In terms of pilot, in terms of the upscaling, the project that I have just described is a pilot project. So it has not gone to the level of upscaling, but we believe with the experience we have in the pilot, we have seen some positive reception, and therefore it is something that I think can go up to scale. The challenge of internet is also something that is being developed. The internet, there are service providers in South Sudan who are also expanding their scope. So we should be able to see this up and running in the next few years.
Thank you. I think, I don't know if Spellman is still with us.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, okay, briefly, please, a minute.
Sure. So I love this question. Should we let government assess and aggregate value chain apps to simplify the landscape? I think there's a lot of appeal to that idea. But let me ask you this question. Can government do it efficiently and transparently? Governments around the world, I would argue, have a pretty mixed record of choosing systems and architectures well. And remember, if you choose the wrong one or if you choose badly, the sunk costs are significant, and the path that puts you on is very difficult to change. So I work with organizations that chose to go with a Google architecture, and let me tell you, I can't communicate them because we use a Microsoft architecture. It's an absolute mess. I think, you know, we like this idea of aggregating things and simplifying, but one of the hallmarks of a digital ecosystem is competition and low entry barriers. That means lots of small app developers working together, you know, lots of analytics firms providing support, multiple architectures, multiple operating systems, multiple backgrounds. And that competition, that heterogeneity, that diversity allows for or encourages innovation. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that innovation then gets crushed by, you know, the big boys and girls buying out the small companies, you know, and that's the practice of Google and Microsoft and Amazon and whatnot. But at least in the earliest stages, you know, that small scale, low barriers to entry sort of ecosystem is what drives digital innovation. At least that's my understanding of sort of the stylized history of this space. So I would really encourage us not to think too much about, you know, giving the government, you know, a centralized role in assessing and aggregating value chain apps to simplify the landscape. I say in this particular case, let things evolve more organically and see, you know, which apps survive, which services survive, which ones are good, which ones aren't. And that'll tell you how good they are.
Thank you, David. I think we are really out of time, and I beg to ask for to bear with us. I beg that the participants bear with us because we still have more hands up, but we promise that all questions on the chat will be responded to. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your contributions. And I take this chance to invite Dr. Maina to give us a summary or to sum up the day's event, the deliberations, as we conclude this particular conference. Thank you very much, Dr. Maina.
Okay, thank you very much, George. And good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those who are in other parts of the world. We have today had a very interesting interaction online. It has been very fruitful with our 4 speakers. We have had a diversity of institutions represented and diversity of nationalities also participating. And our focus today was really on how we can reinvigorate extension using digital technologies to increase youth and private sector participation. So we have just, I'm very quickly going to just recap what has been said in terms of summary. We listened to the presentation on digital technology and how it is being used to address low production issues with data management and lack of information, and to improve service delivery in the dairy sector in Kenya. And clearly, the presentation shows that this innovation has focused on improving quality of services, timely service delivery, and ensuring the right service is also delivered. Our second presentation was on seed companies and their activity in South Sudan, how they are contributing to improve farmer training, to access quality in inputs, seed fertilizers, pesticides, and others, to improve access and use of tools and equipment, to improve harvesting and post-harvesting processes, and also to assist farmers to access markets. And we got insights into how they are leveraging some of what would be considered to be, you know, really challenges with infrastructure. We had the road network as a challenge, and illiteracy levels are high, language barriers, and how digital technologies are being applied to address this. And our third presentation was from David Spielman, and very interesting, we heard about the research done on how ICTs are being used to improve productivity. And clearly this presentation shows that ICTs, the highlights are that ICTs can be a route to making inroads to increase youth participation in agribusiness, in agriculture and agribusiness. And ICTs are lowering barriers for entry of youth into agribusiness. And ICTs are also enabling youth-driven ecosystems. And one of the things that came out is that clearly ICTs have a high impact on yield and performance of farmers. We did clearly see that video in particular is highly beneficial, of course, coupled with other technologies. And very interesting, we had that the model of delivering extension may not actually be the problem, but the problem could be in how it is implemented, in follow-up and monitoring. And this is a very important point, particularly even if we choose to go digital. These are issues that need to be followed up on: implementation, follow-up, and monitoring. And David's presentation showed that content matters and delivery matters, however, whichever method you use. Our fourth presentation was on the performator business, also focused on the dairy sector, and very interesting work being done to improve performance of dairy enterprises in Kenya. We heard about the Academy of Dairy Managers, the dairy farm benchmarks, the KPIs, the business new opportunities in helping supporting farming communities to source and obtain inputs. The e-dairy platform, the Cow Pro, the pay-per-view innovation. This is absolutely very interesting, and these are new opportunities for youth entry into the digital space for extension. A few opportunities were identified, several actually, not a few, and some relate to the fact that youth are vibrant, they are active, they are very well connected. Majority of our youth are living amongst the farming communities where many opportunities exist. One of the other opportunities is that there is a huge market for extension services. There is need. There are many farmers, and government ability to provide extension service is decreasing, and this opens up additional opportunities. In South Sudan, we have had various opportunity to improve e-extension in partnership with the government at the national level. There is good possibility for domesticating, because this is a country which is developing. There is opportunity for domesticating innovations from other countries and other parts of the world, and significant opportunities are identified for companies that are in technology space, for example, to invest in developing infrastructure, for internet and phone coverage. And we have also had there are opportunities in Kenya. This is from the performator presentation in terms of the large-scale initiative for further production, working with the cooperatives and others, and again, there is room to fill in the space which is left, the gap left by government inability or to reach everyone, really, so to say. Some challenges identified. One is that youths will need support with financing very clearly. They will need financing even as they venture into the startups in this digital space to support extension. The other one is skills. Youth are going to need diverse types of skills, including to develop and refine their ideas, to grow them, present them, to establish the necessary partnerships so that they can grow their businesses. There are challenges with coverage of phone and internet in Kenya, and I believe this applies also in other countries. There are challenges with policy gaps, and a few have been identified. I'll add up with them. There is also the issue of multiple operating systems. I think there's diversity in terms of the technologies that can be applied. And one issue which has been highlighted, it's both a challenge and an opportunity, is that there is a huge unemployment issue. And there are so many people who are leaving school and they are not able to enter the job market immediately, but this also presents an opportunity really for some people to enter. Now, some of the areas that can be addressed through policy, one, very interesting, was on taxation to enable these businesses to grow. They are startups, they're just in the early phases, and they will need support. A very huge issue is in regard to regulation of extension service providers, the standards, It seems there aren't any service delivery standards that are enforced. There isn't clearly an agency even to enforce these standards. You know, though some of the services are highly regulated, we had some of them are even subjected to the Kenya Veterinary Board for review. Some of the other areas for policy is in terms of training the youth and supporting them to develop private-public partnerships. The other very important thing is to anchor these e-extension, digitally based extension services, to anchor them to the wider government development framework. And this is a very interesting point. Obviously, with regard to funding, mechanisms are needed that are focused on these digital innovations and also focused on youth. So here, an issue for policy to look at. The other thing is to support access to internet, both access and capacity. Very good possibilities of initiating ICT centers to incubate the startups. An issue of looking at internet costs, because this has direct implication on ability of the targeted communities to access the service. Again, the issue of certification has been raised. And finally, there has been the policy of how you are linking, because some of the functions in agriculture sector are still managed at the central government level and others are managed at the county levels, for example, in Kenya. So a policy, a way to guide and manage the interaction, how this is operating at the different levels would be helpful. And I would like to end my presentation right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maina Mwangi. We'll now invite Henry to make the closing remarks. As we wind up, again, bear with us, we have 15 minutes over time, but I think the topics were so interesting that I think we didn't realize we have exceeded time. Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, team. I'm grateful to each and every one of you for attending, for being here, and most importantly, being with us throughout this presentation, and also contributing significantly, being here. We don't take that for granted. We know that it was, we were actually at some point, we were over 74 people. And 74 people staying for those 2 hours. To actually time it was quite encouraging. We want to thank you. We want also to welcome you to the upcoming, because this is a series of webinars. Because as we said initially, what we thought we wanted to have these as we wanted to have this as we wanted to have this as a one-on-one. It was actually supposed to happen in March, April. Now that what we did is the whole event was a 2-day event, broke it down into 4 seminars, 4 webinars. So today was the first one, and then we have other upcoming webinars. Some will be so in the next. I'm trying to see if I can just find them quickly. If not, then I think we can just say in the next week we still have another one coming in next week. So every week we'll be have. So we move from here. This is 5th. We have 12th. So we will invite you for more. And I think as we move forward, we just want to encourage you to be with us, but most importantly, that we share more of what we are doing in this space, but most important, and also we interact more. So I want to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for attending, for participating, and we will send you every week. We'll be sending you other flyers on the upcoming webinars, and we want to thank you again for being with us. I want to take it back to George, but as I close, say thank you so much, karibuni tena, and we see you again. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Henry, and again, thank you everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. Our emails are open. As we promised, we will continue to respond on questions which I have not responded to in the chat box, and we shall continue to respond to other issues on email. And we invite you to get back to us on email on any other pertinent issues that you thought we should have addressed or we need to look at in our subsequent webinars. Thank you very much and have a good evening and a good day.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. It was fantastic.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Enjoy nyama choma.
Yeah. Yes, Max. It has
You
gone
can now
well.
go. So, Peter.
Yes, Max.
So we need, I think, before to have a quick one, not today, to reflect, and also with Andre to put our technical team up to date.
Yeah, we need.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
We need to
let's
have a
rest
quick
for now.
postmortem.
Then we can do that and see how we back up each other.
Sure.
Otherwise, well done for Henry for your side. Don't run away. We are still coming for you. Sawa, sawa.
No problem. We are here. We'll make sure we go forward. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sawa, sawa.
Asante.
Great job, Team Kenya.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sawa, sawa.
Asante sana.
Thank you, Andre, for the back, Andres, Livia, the technical team for running around when things were getting off, but you fixed them. Thank you.
That was good. I mean, that was really good having a team at the back, just ensuring that they were, the technical part was handled. I think that was wonderful.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right, bye. We can maybe the rest of the team. We can link up maybe later. I think Peter, the rest will let us know when you can link up to just do a debrief for this one. For now, let's close and then we meet next time.
Yeah.
Asante.
Yeah, I think I'll organize that and get back to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.